a thirst beside the river. Wash the journey from your hands. Feel the comfort.
We're ready. Hi, welcome to Healing Outside the Box. I'm Rosemary LaChance, an energy healer, spiritual advisor, and teacher.
And I'm Tracy Crampton, an intuitive advisor.
And we are your hosts for this thought-provoking series and are dedicated to providing you with food for thought information and answers to all modalities of alternative healing, spiritual development, animal welfare, environmental concerns, and so much more in the form of guest speakers who are experts in their fields. This series is recorded, will be shown in your area on your local public service cable network. Please contact them for dates and times. Please visit my website and click on my TV show where you will find a wealth of information about this show.
These shows are available for you to watch free on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and type Healing Outside the Box to make your choices. We are constantly adding new shows, so keep checking back. We are also on Facebook under Healing Outside the Box. Please like our page to get more information on the new shows. We hope you enjoy this show.
Okay, this is show number 239, and the title of the show is Demystifying Fears of Death. And our guest is Lisa how do you say it?
Sarfaty.
Sarfaty. That's nice. Welcome.
Thank you. Tracy?
Lisa?
Okay. I'm going to give you a short bio on Lisa. She's an educator, landlord, innkeeper, certified life cycle celebrant, and community organizer. Wow. Her work for the past few years has focused on death. Rather than having our own death or the death of others haunt our lives, we can choose to allow death to help us focus on appreciating life in every moment, no matter what is happening or what our normal judgments or thought patterns are. Birth and death are the two bookends to our lives, and both are sacred. Death awareness is actually life-enhancing, a seeming paradox, I have found, given the opportunity many people do want to talk about death and demystifying their fears. That's interesting. This, I think, would help a lot of people because we struggle with this so very much.
Yep.
So we have some questions to ask you, and the first one would be, please explain to our audience what a life cycle celebrant, am I saying it right,
yep.
is.
The celebrancy movement started many years ago in Australia, actually, and it came from I guess it's probably sort of, in a sense, it's a grassroots organization or grassroots response to people not attending church as much. You know, that's kind of a trend. Organized religion is. I don't want to say it's decreasing, but there are more people who identify either as what they call nuns, which I always think of as N-U-N, a nun, a sister, but it's really N-O-N-E. So you have this growing group of people who are nuns, as in none of the above, right? And who consider themselves spiritual but not really religious.
That's what I consider myself.
Exactly.
You too? Yeah.
So when it comes to ceremonies, though, like for example, particularly birth and death, not birth and death so much, but as marriage and death. If let's say
the same marriage/death. No.
Well, we'll take them separately,
I
right?
couldn't help myself. Okay.
It came about mostly with marriage because people obviously wanted to get married, but they didn't really want a religious ceremony. But they didn't necessarily want and I don't know what they would be called in Australia, but in the United States, they didn't really necessarily want a justice of the peace. So they wanted someone who could create a ritual, a ceremony, who would bring all those pieces together that can be present in a religious ceremony, but they don't have to necessarily be religious. But ceremony is very important to our lives,
sure is.
And you don't want to just kind of throw it out and say, yeah, we went to City Hall. And I'm not denigrating. There are probably many justices of the peace who bring a lot of ceremony into it, but in general, it was sort of a perfunctory,
like right?
So celebrancy became a thing in Australia, and it's gradually come around the world. And so the Celebrant Foundation and Institute in the United States is one organization that teaches and certifies people, and they're located in Montclair, New Jersey. And I learned about it. I can't even remember I can't even remember how I did. Honestly, all of a sudden I thought, I remembered, but I didn't.
Why you did? Why did you?
Why did I think I remembered?
No, why did you do
seek
it
it out?
altogether?
Oh.
Seek it out.
Well, that's a good question. Okay, so the way I was raised is that my parents would never take me to funerals. Death was very fearful to them. And so we did not grow up with, death was kind of like it was taboo. You just didn't talk about it.
I think that's pretty common.
It is kind of common,
society,
right?
yeah.
I remember the first time I went to an actual funeral. It was terrible because I didn't know what to do. I watched, I'm like, I just have to watch everybody and see what they do. And it was an open casket, so I'm like, okay, now we walk up there. I just didn't know. I had no clue. I wasn't upset. I just didn't know what to do.
Right.
You kind of don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Anyway, so I was raised that way, but then I think it was when I had our son and realized, it was just such an emotional and very spiritual experience. And then as time went on, I thought, it's crazy. Why is that hidden from us? I think the big thing though, what happened was when I turned 60, I realized wow, I have this, whole aspect of my life which is sort of under wraps, and we're not going to talk about it, and I haven't really paid enough attention to the importance, basically, of life itself. I've lived for other people. It's all about duty. What am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to do something for? It wasn't about my life at all. And it took until I was 60 and was really like, oh wow, there's not that much time left. There could be decades, but 60 of them have passed, right? So for me, the thought of my death and approaching my death really enhanced my life. It's like all of a sudden I was like, wow, I'm going to pay attention. The thought that kept coming to me is, if I don't live my life, I'll die and no one will have lived my life. My life would have been not even there, right? Always living other people's lives, always trying to organize other people, etc. So that's how mortality became a real life-enhancing factor for me. And then I came across the Celebrancy Institute, and I thought, then the other thing is, kind of going to funerals particularly, and to me there's nothing worse than a bad funeral. Like when you go to a funeral and it's very perfunctory and you think, wow.
My husband used to say,
wasn't really honored.
My husband used to say, people look and they go, he looks so good. And my husband used to go, how can he look good? He's dead.
I know, as people are at loss of what to say, there's so much awkwardness.
Doesn't he look good?
But part of it is, at least for me, was discomfort with my own, own feelings about it. So as I became more comfortable with it, I thought, wow, it's really a service to people to create a situation and a ceremony that truly honors the person who has died and honors the people who are still living and honors it in a way that really fits that situation.
Right.
It's not a one-size-fits-all. And again, I'm not denigrating anybody else who does funerals or whatever, but I just felt very called to do that. And it's funny because the Celebrant Institute teaches celebrancy for all sorts of things, and most people focus on weddings. I went straight to funerals.
Oh yeah, because it's the missing. We can get very creative with weddings now in this country, but funerals are still.
Yeah, so it just really interested me. Now I thought, I'm going to be a funeral celebrant. Concurrently to that, I ended up doing the innkeeper part, where I've actually, over the last 9 years, lived 6 months in Connecticut and 6 months in way northern New York. So I never actually made it a business, but it was very, it was wonderful training. The training in creating ceremony and the importance of ritual and the kinds of, creativity that you can apply to it and how to really interview people and listen. It was all wonderful training for me. So
you wanted to create these wakes, I guess, for people. That's what you wanted to do. Okay.
Yeah.
But then
help other people kind of understand that they have choice.
Exactly. And help them really express who their loved one was.
Yes.
Yeah. And not like you're fitting the loved one into this box, but you're creating an open space for that loved one to really be alive for the people who were there, and have them have them really experience their grief. Like this is a vessel where you can feel your grief, but you can also celebrate too. One of the problems that I have too is that's very often called now celebration of life, and that's great. But you also want to include the grief, because we're not all happy.
You can't ignore that.
No, you're not all real happy. happy, and it's much more comfortable to be happy. But it's not.
Yeah.
I think in the long run, it's not so healthy. You want to have both pieces: the grief and the sorrow, and and that comes from having loved, but also the celebration and the
I think that's
honoring.
where we struggle, kind of as humanity, is that we don't understand that we can have these contrasting emotions that exist simultaneously.
Right.
You know, like you can feel happy, like, I know I've been to funerals where everybody's laughing, and I find comfort in that, you know, like in the joy that's there. But I've been to other funerals where that's like,
frowned on,
unaccepted. And so, like, for it to be able to coexist, that laughter and the tears and everything together is such a beautiful thing.
Because it's all part of life.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you do that now? Do you?
I don't. I never really made a business.
Oh, she never did.
No.
But you've had other projects related, which is
so
why.
while I was taking that training, I learned about something called death cafes. This was, I don't know, quite a while ago, probably 2011, 2012, something
Death cafes.
like that. Death cafes.
Okay.
And death cafes were so-called invented or created originally by a gentleman, and I don't remember his name, but he was in France, I think. But it was kind of more disseminated around the world by a guy named John, and I'm blanking on his last name. John, I'm sorry, I cannot remember his last name. But he started doing death cafes in England, and then they have spread from there. So there's a website, deathcafe.com. Anyone can hold a death cafe. And a death cafe is really, by design, it's an open space where you come.
It is just a vessel. That was the most amazing thing when I went. Like, there was very little structure.
It's a place where people can come and talk about death in whatever form. It's not a forum for the people who are holding the death cafe to propose anything or to be a proponent or of anything. At least the ones that I've been to, you don't, recommend anything. You're not laying out all these, different resources or anything. The resource is the people who come, because we're pretty wise when we get together and talk. So the first one we held in Guilford, and 60 people showed up.
Where do you hold it?
It was at a library. We had it at the Guilford
so you can
Library.
have not necessarily a restaurant, just any place. Okay.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Now it's called a cafe. Tracy was there. She was
it was
great.
amazing. Yeah.
Well, and be true to what. Anyway, one of the stereotypes of the British is that it includes food, and you have tea and cake. Because part of the idea of that is that food relaxes us.
Yes.
If you're having tea and cake or whatever, you're just chatting with friends. There's no formal thing, whatever. So we had 60 people, and we had different people sit around on tables, and they just had conversations. By the time you went around and introduced everybody, there were tons of things to talk about, and people just really got so much out of it. It was really remarkable.
I remember it because there was, just several tables in the room, and just randomly you'd be with, people you've never met before. And I was with a gentleman who was a funeral director. I was with another woman who, she was in the business of finding other burial, ways to options in burial.
Right.
And then another woman who had lost her father recently, another woman who was having experiences of channeling, like, people who've passed, so it was just fascinating. And another woman who was, I think, a nun, like a UN nun. And so it was just like all these people from these different walks of life and their experiences in and around death and dying, and just open conversation.
How do you
would think that it would like stall, but it never did. It just was so lively.
It was very moving.
How do you advertise for something like that? How did you?
Well, we did a Facebook page, of course, because that's one of the things you do. Then I put notices up in libraries, and I put, I think we did
an email list.
What do you say? Just
Death Cafe, and come talk about death and have tea and cake. I mean,
that's what you said. And that's
literally.
And 60.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a full room.
And also, if you
room.
follow the guidelines, which is again being very open, not being a proponent of anything, you can advertise on the Death Cafe website, and they're all over the country.
Yeah.
I mean, all over the world, really.
Wow, I didn't know
then
that.
we also did. I sent some press releases, and we were very lucky that someone from the this is terrible. Well, I don't remember everything. One of the newspapers, and her name is wonderful, and she's great, and she's done it twice for us, and I can't think of it. But she came and did a story. So there was a story in the local papers that come, like in
the
Madison.
Register,
The Madison is called, the
Citizen
New Haven, or something source.
Journal.
And that, exactly. I can't believe I can't remember all these names, but I can't. Anyway, she was wonderful, and she did a story on it because it was so interesting. So I sent the press release in, and she went, oh, this is a story. So she did a little story on it. So it got a little press that way. But it was mostly local people who came.
Yes.
That's really
And
cool.
I remember being very curious when I got there, like, okay, and you just like introduced, told people where the tea and coffee was, divided everybody into tables, and then was like very hands off. I was like, oh, we're not here to have a lecture or like learn anything from a speaker. It was all from one another.
It was great. So then we've done a couple since then, and then the Shoreline Unitarian Universalist Society, which is physically located in Madison, was going to do an end-of-life thing. So they wanted to do a death cafe, so we did one with them. And then out of that grew another, last April, I think, we did a whole, because you can't, if you go by the spirit of the Death Cafe, you can't really proselytize with anything, but we wanted to offer other kinds of workshops, and there was a wonderful film that was called Mortal, and we wanted to, sort of play that for people. It was about 90 minutes long, I think. So anyway, we had a half-day workshop, so we did that in Madison also.
And they liked the film?
Yeah, it was great. So we had about, I don't know how many people there, maybe 70 people came to that. And that was, we showed the film to everyone, and then there were we broke it out, and one was on grief, and one was on designing your own ceremonies. It was done by another celebrant. And one of them was, there's a funeral home in, I should have brushed up on all this stuff, but I know what I was going to say. Deep River, and I can't think of the name of it, but and they do green burials. So he came and talked about
green
that.
burials,
and many people were interested. That was a very popular one.
Maybe you can explain that for our audience.
Well, it's in different. There are different levels of it, but what they do is in green burial, you use basically a biodegradable coffin. So you can use just wood, of course, or seagrass that's woven, etc. You could be buried in a shroud, although not every cemetery allows that. And you're not embalmed. So once you're buried, you will decay. You actually decay. Right.
Wow, that's great.
So
that's
putting
great.
chemicals and
that's great.
If you think about,
there are only 2 funeral
coffins
homes.
are made up of so many.
Oh yeah, and lined with steel
materials.
Right? So you're never going to degrade.
That's how it should be. That's why the American Indians burned, and it was done over with.
Yeah. Anyway, so there are only 2 places, two funeral homes in Connecticut, and we were lucky that one of them was nearby. Yeah. The other one's in Danbury.
They have to remember that. It's called a green burial.
Yep.
Remember that out there if you're interested in that kind of thing. And of course, you can get in touch with us or Lisa, and she'll tell you about it. Okay. All right.
Now, the one other thing that I've done in terms of death is then I think it was last year, the year before, I ran across a book called Death Over Dinner. I don't know if I've ever told you that one.
Yes, a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Death Over Dinner was another concept where you bring people together over a meal, which is a relaxing sort of, like we're used to that. Like, you sit around the table and you just talk, right? Only this time we're going to talk about death. Michael Hebb, H-E-B-B, was one of the main organizers of this movement. It was started out on the West Coast, and he's done a lot of other things in his life. But this is really growing, too. So there are many, many places that do Death Over Dinner, and my husband and I have done about 5 of them. So there's a format. And again, if you go to deathoverdinner.org or com, one or the other, they lead you through it, so anybody can do it, and they give you a whole like a script almost, which you don't have to follow. And
but it opens.
Yeah,
it gives
but
you
they even send you
something
that you can email to your friends, people that you think you might like to invite. But they're wonderful. They're remarkable. You sit there. In fact, that's what I asked for my birthday. So this year on my birthday, my husband was like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I want you to organize a Death Over Dinner. And it was all family members.
Oh, wow.
So, you'd think you talk about all this with your family, but you kind of don't.
And I think family members especially are afraid to talk to one another about it because
so it was great. It was
they don't want to
birthdays I ever had.
They don't want to put their minds around their loved ones eventually.
So what do you do? They talk to each other about this?
It's a format.
You have a
It's a wonderful, and it's a beautiful format. You start out, and every person raises a glass to someone, and you just have a tribute. They're all short. They're short shears. So you raise it, have a tribute to somebody. So even if you're with people you don't know, now you know something about them, right? So we went around the table and you did that, and then meanwhile you're eating dinner, so you're past the salt or whatever, and then you have a number of questions. So you bring up a question, and then people have the chance to go around and answer it.
Oh.
And you kind of set the stage. It's not like a lot of dinners where you're interrupting each other. Each person has the opportunity to really say something from their heart about whatever the question is. Or you can pass. It doesn't matter.
Right.
And there's so many different questions that you can kind of pick and choose. But so then maybe you get through 3 or 4 or 5 of those questions, and at the end, then it's a beautiful ceremony where you turn to the person. Somebody volunteers to start, and then you turn to the person on your left, and you just acknowledge them, or you say something that really touched you about that person, whether it's somebody
nice.
you know or not, and then it goes all around the table, and then you're done.
That's nice.
And then you get to come back to the real world again.
That's really, really, really nice.
It is lovely. I recommend it.
Yes.
So, how do you think our culture differs from others in attitudes and beliefs about death and dying?
That's a great question, and I honestly feel like I'm not sure I could contrast it to other cultures other than hearsay. I'm certainly not an expert on that. What I think it does is it's contrasting to our own culture from maybe 100 years ago.
Oh, true.
Just within our own culture, it's changed a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. There are homes here in Connecticut, really old homes, that still have the funeral, the casket door.
Room, yeah.
Yeah, where you had a special door that led into your parlor, and that was to bring the casket in and out, because you couldn't thread it through the house, So
Right.
so that happened at home. People, I mean, think of all the different cemeteries that you drive by in all these little towns that are essentially family cemeteries, or a few families from the area, right? So death was so much more close.
Yeah,
Close, yeah.
It feels
close.
more like a business now.
Yeah. So
It's unfortunate.
yeah, so I think that even within our own culture, it's changed a lot. And again, I'm not going to criticize it. I just think that people now are realizing maybe what we've lost and wanting to bring back some of those aspects, at least, like the green burial. Home funerals are now becoming more. It's not. It's legal in many places. It is not legal in both the states that I go to, which is Connecticut and New York.
It really?
No,
It's not legal?
No, not legal.
Wow.
You cannot have once a person has died, that body cannot stay in your house.
Why?
It can come back to your house. You can. It's the.
And
I'm not going to say
who's going to speculate. It could be business.
I'm not going to say.
It
I'm
sounds
not
like
say,
business.
CDC worried
It
about
might
diseases.
be.
You never know.
Here's the thing. For whatever reason, it has to go. The body has to go to a funeral home, and then if you want to have a wake at your home, you can do that. However, all those are costs. So many people don't do that because it's just another cost. So anyway, that's so. But that's not true in every state.
Yeah.
In many states are now trying to
More
natural burial
open-minded.
grounds.
I think as we get
etc.
into more environmentally friendly practices too, we'll
Things will
return to
change.
some of those.
And there's so many new
practices.
things. You can have your remains made into a diamond. You can shoot the remains up into sky.
Into a pod
rocket.
that's a tree and fertilizes the tree.
Now they have mushroom suits. You put the body in a mushroom suit, and the mushrooms eat it up. Or they have this hydrolyzer or something, where instead of cremation, you're just basically melted. So there's just
that's
I'm
melted.
melting. I'm melting. Couldn't help that one.
So there are a lot of different. There literally are a lot of different options.
Yes.
I never knew any of that.
Oh yeah.
That's really
and they're
great.
going to appeal to some people. I personally would not want to wear, any of my relatives on my hand as a diamond, but there are people who would. So why not? Why not?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, then there's cryo.
Cryogenics.
Yeah, so
Try and
so
come
that's
back.
a whole other thing.
Right. Not for me. Not for me. No.
Yeah, this lifetime.
I liked it when I was a kid. I liked it when funerals now I know are expensive as anything. People can't afford it,
Yeah,
so
I think that's,
they don't even have it, and they cremate right away, and then you don't even get to see the person, and it's like you don't even go to a funeral parlor a lot. You just go to church. When I was a kid, they were 3 days long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And after every day, we go to one of the aunts' houses and have pot macaronis.
Yeah,
right.
of
And all
course.
get together and play cards and all.
Yeah.
Go back the next. Go back.
But that's very healing.
Yeah,
all that
it was. It was
processing.
fun. It was nice, and you remember them in a nice light. And I
Yeah,
liked.
you do. And everybody pauses their busy
Yes.
lives for
Yes.
a moment
Yeah.
to remember what's important.
Exactly.
Like, I know we were talking a little bit about, like, how death makes us
Appreciate life,
appreciate life so much
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
I like to see the person last time. I don't
Yeah.
like to go and see nothing. It's like, just go to church. I don't want to go to church. I don't go to church anyway. So what? I want to see. To me, it's. I don't like the way it's done now. And I would have a ceremony. My daughter knows not like that at all. No
Yeah.
church, none of that stuff, and whatever. So, but anyway, okay.
Thinking
So
of number 4, like how do you think we could best honor the wishes of our dying and relatives, loved ones, like?
Well, I think the main way to do that is to have the conversations before they die, like the death over dinner.
Right.
It's not that easy for people, so, but I really encourage it. It's, and there are lots of different things that can help that. Like, I forget who, Anna Quindlen, I think, has a whole project called
right.
The Conversation. And the conversation is, it's like, again, you could find it online, and it's like a format where you sit down and you talk with your loved ones, whether they're young, old, or in between, and talk about these issues. But it's so taboo, and it's so scary for people that they don't do it. So I think having the
people
conversations
have some complications
beforehand.
within their families because people have various opinions. So I think it's pretty important to know ahead of time
really
what
important.
that person's wishes are.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it could be so much disagreement and so much strife.
And then you have this feeling after someone is gone that you didn't really honor them in the way that you and sure, your life goes on and you can continue. It's not like you're just going to fall on the floor and stay there forever, but it doesn't give you the contented feeling. Like when my parents died, it's like I was really focused on, I don't want to have any regrets. I don't want that to come with me. So I just, let's get it real clear. Let's be as clear as possible and as open as possible about it ahead of time.
Given that they were very fearful, were they open to that conversation later?
Well, my dad, no. But my mom, she would listen.
Yeah.
She would listen, and she was much more open to it. No, my dad, no. Why are we talking about this? No, absolutely not. He didn't want to talk about it. So,
So, all right, so you have the green death, which when you melt, green burial.
Yeah.
And then you have Death Cafe.
Death Cafe.
And what was that other one with the dinner?
Death Over Dinner.
Death Over Dinner. Okay.
Oh, it's awesome. I totally recommend that for people. It sounds like it would be the most gruesome, morbid thing. It's so moving. It's so freeing for people to talk about that.
Right.
We had one guy who came to one of ours, and he kept saying, "I'm just not the conversation type." But he shared the most amazing things, and his wife was sitting there, kind of going like,
"Who is this person?" Yeah.
She was so touched that these conversations came up,
Yeah.
and he went right back to sort of being really gruff the next day. But he had the conversations.
Yeah.
It was great.
It really
was.
is.
And
Yeah.
it's very. It was really an honor to be in the presence of them sharing. It really was. So, I highly recommend that.
So how can we promote this change and choice in preparing for our passing or somebody else's?
You're doing it right now, aren't you, Rosemary?
Yeah.
So good for you, and good for you, Tracy.
Yeah, both of us.
Yeah. Just by having this will reach people that who would not maybe would not have been reached any other way.
Right.
So to continue the conversations, just to keep it out there in front.
Right.
And I think that it's going to become more. I think people, and young people particularly, they don't want anything off limits. Young people are willing to talk about anything, which is pretty remarkable.
Yes.
So
yes.
I think that it's also businesses now are growing up, so those businesses are going to be promoting more openness. So things will happen. But the main thing is, and the other thing would be, and again, it's not easy, but if one finds oneself being reluctant to bring this up, or feeling, the thing will come up in your mind like, oh, my family would never do this. I can't do that. just look and see if that really is true, or if it's something within yourself that's really being it's easy to say, oh, I'm not going to bring it up because no one else would want to talk about it. But it might not be them. It might be me.
Right.
Or the other thing is seek out other ways to do it. If you can't do it in your family, and maybe you can't, look for other ways to do it in your community.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had also like a YouTube channel too, where you had people come on, Memento Mori.
Oh yeah, my podcast.
Yes.
That's right.
It's on YouTube though.
It's on YouTube also, and it's also on Facebook. Memento. It's called Memento Mori Stories. Memento Mori is a term. I didn't make that up. That's a Latin term, and it basically means "remember you will die." And it's used in various things. If you go on YouTube and put Memento Mori, and you'll get a million different things.
M-E-U-R-Y?
MEMENTOMORI.
Oh, M-O-R-I.
M-O-R-I. Memento Mori.
Okay.
In the Elizabethan times, it was, and Victorian times, probably more Victorian, it was things like taking your loved one's hair and making a piece of art, and you would keep it with them because that would remind you that they've died and you're going to die. Or there's art out there that's like a human being and it's like half corpse and half flesh. And people would put those in their houses, like Memento Mori. I'm going to die. That's that's going to happen. That's
to remind you.
A real corpse, or
that you're
mortal.
You're a mortal being.
Yeah, exactly. No, this was art.
Art.
So I took a podcast class because I like to do different things, and of course I knew it was going to be on death somehow. So it ended up to be I came up with the idea of telling little stories, of talking with people and then publishing them anonymously. So if you go on YouTube and look up Memento Mori Stories, it's not the greatest, it's not a thrilling video, but you see an intro and then you see an object.
An item, yeah.
I will tell you, this ring is one of the ones that that's an episode. So this ring was given to me by one of my grandmothers, my father's mother, when I was young, when I was in my 20s, and I honestly don't remember the circumstance. I just know it was from her. And I can't even figure out how she would ever, this is a very southwestern turquoise, and my grandmother was very straight-laced and lived in northern New York. I'm like, I don't even know how she got it. Now, of course, I wish I knew, but I don't know. But what happened is my father got older and kind of was a little, dementia, etc. Every time I saw my father, he'd say, "You got that ring from my mother, didn't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I did." Right? Then he'd say, every time, how'd you come to have that? And I'd say, what's funny, Dad? You don't remember that you asked me that before, and I don't remember how I got this ring. And then we'd laugh. And then the next time I saw him, we'd do it all over again. Because that's what we did, right?
That's cute.
So the ring became
a
for
memory
me.
For him.
Yeah, it's like a bridge between the generations, right? And I like the ring, but it became a point of conversation between my father. And I wore the ring for a million times when he was didn't have dementia, that he would never notice it, but he focused on it then. So it was a kind of conversation.
Brought him back to his mother.
So what I did with the Memento Mori Stories is I had a series of questions, and it could be about a ring, and I would ask people why, what was the object, and who was the person, and tell me something about it, and why did the object choose you, or did you choose the object, and sort of what does it mean to you when you look at it, and then I would take my voice out of it. So what it became was just this little anonymous story about an object and a relationship with a person who has died and what it meant to them. And they're really lovely. They're lovely stories.
Yeah.
That's really
very
nice.
moving.
Yeah.
Very moving.
So I've done about, I don't know how many, maybe 30 of those, I think. And they started out as a podcast, right, because that was the class. And then my son immediately says, well, Mom, podcasts have to be on YouTube too. And I'm like, oh.
That's where I found it.
So then I had to then I learned, fortunately I already knew how to use iMovie, so then I would make it into a video. So then I would put it on YouTube, and then I put it on Facebook, and then I learned how to do Instagram. I'm like, whoa.
That's great.
Yeah, so it was a good learning experience.
Yeah, I'd like to learn how to do podcasts. You know how to do that?
A little bit. I've never done. I've been on them, but I haven't.
I'll tell you afterwards. I'll tell you the class that I took. It was an online class. It was great.
Well, Carla does it, so she knows.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So maybe she can teach us.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world. You have to learn all sorts of different things. So.
Wow.
Anyway, so I did the Memento Mori Stories too. So.
That sounds good. I keep getting in my mind about Roland. Roland Comtois, who's like a John Edwards. He gets the people on the other side
they bring
get in touch
an
with him.
object to him,
Or whatever.
Picks up something from
he
it.
writes these purple papers.
Oh.
He's home, and all of a sudden, somebody will contact him from the other side, and he'll write it down. And he started doing on these big sheets of purple paper.
Oh, for heaven's sake!
And almost as big as a table. And he would
Like automatic writing, almost. Yeah.
Yeah, and he would keep it, and then he would he has these shows every so often.
Yeah.
And he'll know that this purple paper, he'll read
Belongs
some of
to
them,
that person.
or some he'll know it belongs to the person or person. And it's just interesting. That could go nice with what you have. Because saying, okay, so this is not so bad because now they don't really die. Life goes on, and now you can get some. That would be nice. A whole nice.
Sure.
A whole nice weekend doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
It would help people a lot.
Yeah, it could.
Yeah.
It definitely could.
So if you ever think about it, let me know. I'll let you get in touch with him.
So on
Yeah.
this journey, have people come to you to kind of get some ideas around how to deal with like their fears towards dying? Like, have you connected with anybody who's been in the dying process? I mean, even your parents. Like, what did you feel like that was like when they were dying and dealing with their own fears around that?
Well, it's interesting because I guess I would be reluctant to force anything on my parents. I would talk. My mother was more open to it, so I would talk to her somewhat about it. Her sister, who she was very close to, had died about 6 months before she died, and I talked to Tracy and talked to her sister. So I would tell my mom about that. Just like, okay, Mom, you don't have to do anything with this. I'm just going to tell you.
Just gonna share.
Yeah, I'm just going to share. So I don't know. I mean, that's what I did with her.
Just
I
meet
just
people
shared
where they're at.
Yeah, I just didn't force anything.
Because I'm wondering, like, for our audience, I mean, we all lose loved ones eventually, and not only are we dealing with our own fears, but we're helping to comfort them through their fears as well. And so,
I think the main thing is to work on, that I have found is to work on myself. It's I think maybe the way I was raised or the time period that I grew up in is always other focused. Oh, I have to help this person. Oh, I'll go teach this person. So I was a teacher.
Yeah.
So it's always easier to say, oh, I'm going to help this person. But it's not as authentic if I haven't done the work
and be
myself.
Present.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a lot of it is, the other thing that's very big now is the death doula movement, which is very much about
I have a
being
friend who does
with
this.
people. Yeah, right
What's
across
it
the
called?
street from you.
Yeah.
A doula. Doula, D-O-U-L-A, I believe it's a Greek word, and it's. I first became aware of it with birth.
Right, like midwifery.
Yes,
somebody who kind of not necessarily coaches, but
they
like
can be with you in the
supports
hospital,
you.
but also just helping when you get home.
Yes.
It's a help. It's a person who's comfortable in that environment. Is helping around the birth and early life of the
adjustments.
Exactly. So now you have death doulas. So there are people who are helping in the process, not only the person who's dying, but the family.
And
yes. Some of it's very mundane. It's like, okay, you got to get the license, plates, changed over to the car, and you got to contact Social Security. And But a lot of it is helping with the emotional impact of this, and helping each individual, and trying to get the family to have the conversations with Dad who's dying before he dies, and you can't. Have these conversations, because it's so much easier to just come in and say, no, Dad, you're going to get better, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, that's what we do.
And then when they're gone, you're like, wow, I didn't really say much to him about how much I loved him and prepared, and we'll miss him and respected him, and thanks for teaching me this and that.
You think your role is to be like a cheerleader and a pep squad.
Anyway, to get back, it's the more authentic the more I go through my own experiences and look at the things that I have reluctant to look at in myself, the more authentically you can help someone else. You really have to do your own work first. I never wanted that. I always skip over that part, but it doesn't work really.
There's some people who even have that have their wake before
Yes,
they die.
yeah.
And all the
so
people come.
that's an interesting
Yeah.
concept.
Another thing is writing your own obituary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So when the people come, they all get up and they talk about the
Yeah.
person and how it was,
Yeah.
and he can hear all this and everything, you know, or she can hear all of it and everything, and then it can be funny and a lot of fun and everything else, or
Yeah.
things they would say, you know,
Yep.
make fun.
Yeah.
You could turn it into something really, really nice, you know. And that's if it's like that, if it's slow, if you know.
I know. I was
because you
just
have
saying, then you
closure.
have like deaths that happen very suddenly.
Sudden
and-
death. What about that?
Yeah. That
What
can
about
be very
that?
hard.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
all of a sudden.
Again, this is why you don't want to take. You don't want to.
You don't want to bring your stuff into it.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
like
you want to have the conversations ahead of time. Like
Yeah.
have them now when no
Yeah,
one's sick.
even, you know, from the time people
Yeah,
are
because, you know-
children and they can understand
Right.
all the way through
Right.
life.
Why wait?
Right.
Have the conversations that you want. You know,
It feels
we had-
it feels like such a mystery, you know, like
Yeah.
because we don't talk about it with our
Yeah.
children and our families
Yeah.
as they're.
Why wait to
Anyways.
tell people how much you appreciate them? Do it.
Oh,
do
that
it
too.
now. Then sudden death. Again, obviously you're distressed, but you don't have this backlog of things. Oh, I should
Oh, I
have told them.
guilt.
That. Yeah. Oh, that's so. It's such a burden. It's really hard.
It really is hard.
Yeah.
Because my son passed suddenly.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And I know about spirituality. I believe in life
Yeah.
after death. I believe in we go on forever, just different form, reincarnation, all that. And I taught him all that too, you know. But it's hard,
Yeah.
especially when it's a child.
Yeah.
You know.
It's like a whoosh,
Yeah.
shock.
It is. It's
Yeah.
like. I can't even explain it.
Yeah.
So people like who've had that happen, you could get something together for that because
Oh, yeah.
they really need. I wish I had it at that time, you know. Even though I knew everything, it's
Yeah,
still.
yeah. And
I think
even
it
though
would've
you
been
brought it to your heart, now your heart is broke. It's
Yeah.
open. It's like.
would have helped to talk to people who've had the same experience, and we could comfort each other.
Yeah.
That would have been a big help at that time, but I didn't have anyone. So that's something I'm going to put out there.
Those
you know?
networks.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah, there are
becoming
lots.
more-
There's a lot more.
It's a lot
grief
more
networks.
grieving support.
Yeah.
Grief
In fact,
support now.
there's a group, and they have, and it's called. It has something to do with the word dinner in it, but it's for young people who have lost spouses mostly, but also other loved ones, and get together and they just do dinners and they can talk like openly
Because there's
because
this
everyone
whole
understands.
taboo
like,
around
I haven't
grief.
lost my son suddenly, so
Right.
I'm not going to be able to talk to you the same way.
Right.
I'm just not, no matter how much I would want to. So there are other groups that and it's an organization. Again, I can't think of the name of it, but you could find it online, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess if you go online, you
Yeah.
can just Google all that kind of thing
Yeah.
and see what you come up with.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now you're on to other chapters. You're kind
Yeah.
of experiencing a new era now, like you're having grandchildren
Oh, yes.
soon, and
Yes.
so I
Yeah.
think like it's interesting how things come full circle.
Yeah,
like you have this
absolutely.
like healing through, your curiosity and your exposure to different things around celebrating death, and now you get to celebrate
I know.
life.
We're so
and
excited.
it's-
We have one
Yes.
son, and our son and daughter-in-law are having their first baby within a month or so. And yes, we're very, we are so excited.
Yes.
So-
Definitely.
Spirituality versus religion in the death scenario. What do you think about that? How do you think anything about it? Do you have anything to say about that?
I think it's important.
You can say
for
anything you want on cable television. So
I think it's important for people to find the comfort that works for them.
Right.
Okay, I have. It was funny. I have two sisters. So my youngest sister is an ordained American Baptist minister. So she went to Yale Divinity School. So she's what I call the real minister, right? So then I went through the Certified Life Cycle Celebrant. So I can perform ceremonies, and because marriage is a legal concept. In Connecticut, you have to either be a justice of the peace or a minister. So I'm also a minister, with
you are? That's good to know.
With Universal Brotherhood, right? So, because otherwise you can't do weddings, right? Right. And so it was funny when I got it. So I like the next family dinner I went to. I'm like, yeah, I'm a minister, woohoo! You know, because I wanted to make sure that my sister wasn't worried. Because I'm like, it's not the same as you, but I am a minister. And so then my third sister goes, well, okay, now I'll admit it. I'm a minister too.
Is she really?
She had gone through a program, a very spiritual program in New York City, where she lives, and she, some people there wanted to do counseling. So the person who teaches the class got, she went through the paperwork, whatever it is, and so I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding! All three of us.
There's a reason you're sisters. How about that?
That is so funny.
Incarnated together.
So anyway, there's a great difference. Okay,
in how you,
right?
How you,
but each
minister.
So each person needs to find the way that's most comfortable for them. The tough part, I think, is we were brought up in a Protestant religion, and it was a very strict religion. So there was a long period of time where I had a lot of reactions to that. So the tough part, I think, is to find the way that you want without being defensive. Like, I don't need to make any other tradition wrong in order to be comfortable in the way that I want to.
Oh, yeah.
But that took time. So for a while there was a lot of anger. So what do I think about organized religion versus spirituality
of it? Yeah.
I think whatever fits you.
Whatever brings people.
Yeah, I once knew a woman that she was wonderful. She was very spiritual, and I'm telling you, her best friend was Jesus.
Yeah.
And I, at that time, was hating Jesus like big time, so, just because of
you were questioning
my own
and
thing.
and
and authoritarian, blah blah blah, whatever, But I was fascinated. I loved her so much, and I respected her. But I was just really floored, and that made a huge impact on me. Like, well, I'm not going to hate somebody who's this person's Claire's best friend, So it's an evolution. I think for some people, an organized religion and a real tradition,
path, it's their
beautiful
comfort,
for them. It's very comforting to them.
Right.
So I can't say there's anything wrong with it.
Right.
But you got to find what works for you.
Yeah. But what I was meant with it was when it comes to dying and death and so forth, what would comfort them the most? There's lots of answers that
you
religion
have to find the
answer.
intersection where that person's beliefs and your beliefs intersect, and you can be there in that space with that person. I guess, right.
And as a celebrant doing a funeral, you were really cautioned to be very respectful. If people want you to do a lot of prayers and stuff, if I don't feel like I am a minister, but I'm not a minister from calling, so to speak. So you might ask another family member who is religious
to have a few words.
Would you do the prayer for that? Because that would be it's more authentic because it's coming from someone who's from that tradition.
Yes.
So you can help them design the ceremony. You can do a lot of ritual, but you don't have to do everything. You pull in the pieces that really aren't going to be authentic from a celebrant point of view. But then there are some celebrants who are very religious, and so that's fine too.
Right.
So you have to kind of work. You have to work with it. But it always comes down to knowing yourself. Really, it does.
Oh yeah, everything else is just a projection trying to teach you about yourself, right?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah,
it's beautiful stuff.
So
yeah, we have children coming up. So now, how would you, now you have an opportunity with your, is it going to be we don't know.
Oh boy,
yet.
No, we know it's a boy.
Grandson. I kept thinking grandson. Are you going to be introducing him to these concepts early on?
Well,
is your son good with that?
Yeah, how is your family with it?
I think so. I think it's extremely important to be very respectful. I'm not the parent.
Right.
So
children are very precocious though, and they
but I've already bought plenty of books about death that are children's books. So we'll talk about it. And I'm completely comfortable with that. I don't think it does either the parent or the child much good to gloss over it. If you're a pet, but there's so many. The pet dies, or something. You don't just gloss over it and say, they're, you learn that way. You go through the grief and you talk about how much you love them. I mean, there's just so many opportunities instead of saying, don't cry, don't cry.
Yeah, that's what they used to do.
They went to heaven, don't cry. They're in a better place.
What does that mean?
Sure
I remember
my
my sister passed when I was 5, and it was so confusing because, my family was very Catholic and religious at the time. We were going to church, and I think my mother, was finding a lot of comfort in that. But I was just getting all these crazy messages about heaven and hell, and sometimes the messages about hell, would kind of sink in, and I had a lot of fear and a lot of misunderstanding. Yeah. And I remember being plagued with bad dreams and everything around her passing, and sort of being very buffered from it too, which made it even more confusing, where when she, I didn't have the opportunity to kind of have more of a bird's eye view of what was going on, which I know adults are well-meaning, but it's just added to that confusion.
Yeah, when they want to protect, they think they're protecting us, but they're really not protecting us because we don't have any answers. And so we're out there doing, But it wasn't like that for me when I was young. It was death was celebration always.
Oh, that's good.
Dinner with the aunts
family,
and uncles.
every night, and then back there and back and forth, and it was always,
But and sometimes it has a different tone if you're losing an elder as opposed to a child.
My son, it was completely different.
Yes,
So
because we're not, they always think you're not supposed to outlive your children. I mean,
No, you're not supposed to outlive them. No.
Yeah.
So there should probably different grieving things for who you lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Your mother, your parents,
and
those
the age
of
at which you experience that.
Those of you who had good relationship with your parents, then there'll be a problem there. Relatives, your family, and the animals. You're right about that.
Oh, yeah.
You shouldn't just fluff that off.
Pets are very important to people.
Oh yeah.
Very important.
My neighbor's
family.
When their cat passed, they invited people over. They had a ceremony in the yard, and put them in a box, buried them, put flowers, did the whole thing for their kids and everybody. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
You really need to do that, And then, of course, they told him that he was going to be, in heaven and all that stuff, which they are. And that's a good introduction.
Pays tribute.
Yeah. For children when they're young to do something like that.
Right.
And then when it's a relative, they have to then right. I'm telling you, but you tell me. Talk to the kids. Talk to the young people.
Yeah. But see, again, it comes back to the person. If you haven't done your own work, you don't have the words to talk to your kids.
Right. Exactly.
I don't want to shame any parents. Some people have not had that experience. So you're going to do the best you can, but hopefully, if you can work it out your own self and feel comfortable and or even be okay with being uncomfortable, because that's okay too.
Right.
Just to be honest, and not try to give answers that you don't know.
And that's key, because sometimes, I think we kind of come at it from we want to provide some answers, but do we all really know? We can't say it is this way, this is going to be your experience once you pass, because
and kids are very
don't know for
concrete.
sure.
They want clear answers.
Yes.
So to bring up something and say, well, you know what, we don't really know. People have different ideas. They might not like that, but we can be okay that they don't like that, because that's part of the learning. That's how we learn as we grow up.
Right.
I don't always get what I want. I don't get everything that perfect
tidy little
Yeah.
and that's it. We want to make it easy by making it very tidy for them.
Can't always do that.
No, and really, they really should have help with that, no matter when, because we're all born with the thought in our head that we're going to die.
Yeah.
And it's with us our whole life, so we just don't think about it.
No.
Push it aside.
Right.
Right.
And then it happens, and it's like, you know, and then you think about your own death, you know, and then you think about the death of the people you love, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So it's a subject that really needs to be talked about, and the only way you can talk about it is spiritually.
Yeah.
Because I personally find that religions don't have the answers. You die, you go to get to the last rites, you go to heaven. Well, that doesn't compute. Well, he was such a terrible person, he's going to go to heaven, you know, on and on. Oh, we'll go to purgatory or hell. Oh, forget that, you know.
Yeah.
That's a scare tactic, you know. That's all it is, a form of control.
Yeah.
So.
Well, much of religion turned out to be that.
Yes.
It didn't start that way, but it turned out
to be a
that.
form of control,
Yeah,
because then became an organized business to make money. So, you know.
As far as grief with children, we're very lucky in Connecticut. The organization called the Cove. Do you know that? COVE.
No.
It's awesome. COVE, the Cove. I can't remember where it is. It's somewhere in central Connecticut. But they work specifically with grieving children. They're a wonderful organization.
Oh, wow.
That's good. Y'all hear that out there?
Excellent. Excellent
Cove.
resource, yeah.
Look that
they
up.
have fundraisers. I mean, and they have people who, you know, work with them, and anybody can call upon them for for help. But particularly, you know, grief for children. Really great. So we're really fortunate in Connecticut to have that.
Yeah.
So they can get all the information they need by just getting on the internet and Googling everything, or whatever you use for a search engine, and trying to find that out, because it really is something that should be done. You know, and you know, I hope that your being here will help people to see that you got to start taking this by the hand, because it's going to happen someday.
I recommend it.
No, I mean, really, it's a gentle way, and we all have to do it. And so why not?
And also just to understand how your loved ones want to be honored, you know, while they're dying and after they die, because, you know, sometimes they don't want
there's the practical aspects, and those are important too, you know, but the emotional work is, we're emotional, you know, we'd like to, I always, you know, I was raised that people were supposed to be logical, you know, I always say my father was like Data on, you know, Star Trek, but, and that's what he wanted. He wanted to believe that, but we're not. We're really emotional people, creatures. So
honor
to
those
ignore
emotions.
that is to really shortchange yourself, I think.
There's some strength and vulnerability, they say, right?
Well, and there's power and powerlessness. We are powerless over so many aspects of our life. But to recognize that means, I have power over myself. I have power over my reactions. I have power over my responses. Response is different than reactions. I do have power, but it resides here. So I'm powerless over pretty much everything out there.
So celebrate it all, not just the births and the weddings, but also the passings.
Well, I say celebrate death, because it's just the beginning of a new journey.
It is,
That's what I always say when somebody passes on. I wish you luck on your new journey. I mean, I'll put that in there, like if it's on Facebook or something like that, and you hear about someone passing over, because it is a new journey. And you could look at it like that. So, you know, maybe they should have a one of these organizations for those kinds of things, wondering what will happen when I die, where will I go, what will I do, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, and people can, you know, share what they think might happen. Maybe we make it up.
How about that?
Maybe we make up what happens to us after we pass.
Well, my husband's a psychologist, and one of his pet I don't want to call it theory, but one of his things that he talks about is that all knowledge is metaphor. I mean, we really do live in stories. You know, what is real? What's our story? So if everything is a story, you might as well make up ones that are empowering.
That's what I tell
like,
people
you know,
too.
why believe in an unempowering story when you could choose one that's empowered and that's empowering to you? So and stop worrying about
even if it is just to bring you peace in your passing, right?
Who cares if it's right or wrong?
You know, and I say that with
kind of isn't really a whole lot of
people
right
who
now.
are like, I don't want to get my hopes up because I don't want them to be dashed. Well, wouldn't you rather be in that energy of hopefulness and faith than in, you know, waiting for the shoe to drop? Then maybe it does, and then you're like, okay, I was right.
Well, this has been wonderful.
Well, thank you so much.
But it's time to close and give contact information.
Okay.
Yes.
Time flies.
All right. So thank you.
Well, thank you so
wonderful.
much. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful to have you here, and I hope this will help people. You gave them plenty of information now, so lots of different places they can go to.
Oh my goodness, so many resources.
All right. Ready? Here we go for the contact information. For me, Rosemary LaChance, 203-627-7966. Email whitebuffalo8@comcast.net. My website, www.rosemaryLachance.com. And the website of www.gabrielle-publishing-house.com, where you get a world of information about death and dying and so many other spiritual things. There's so many books there for you to pick and choose from.
Nice. And this is my information, Tracy Crampton. Here's my website, tracycrampton.com, and my telephone and email address.
Lisa.
I don't have a website, but that's my email and my phone number. If anyone would like to contact me, you're certainly welcome to. And thank you for watching, and thank you to Tracy and Rosemary.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So there it is. You have it. And it was a great night, and we want to say good night to everybody. So good night, and thank you for being with us. We'll see you next time. Mwah.
Fill your thirst beside the river. Wash the journey from your hands. Feel the comfort flow inside you. Come this far.